What's up builders, it's me Jimbotron back at you with another video. In today's video, we are going to be doing a guide review. Specifically, we will be looking at the Detonation D.va. Let's get into it. As always, the gameplay is in the background so that you can see what the build is about, and my voiceover will be explaining it while that happens. The core of this build is all about building around your ultimate, self-destruct. We do that by scaling up the ways that we can get this ultimate in the early game, and then later buffing it up to be a very strong and impactful ultimate in the later game. There are quite a few options that we can go with this build, so let's go through those. Because self-destruct does so much damage, we actually don't need to build that much into AP, and this build mainly focuses around survival, so you're very good at being a tank whilst also being able to deliver game-winning ultimates all of the time. As for powers, the first item I like to take is Ignition Burst. This makes it so that every single one of your booster collisions does 60 additional AP damage. This is nice. It's about 5% ultimate charge per target that you hit with your boosters. This will leave you quite vulnerable though in round 1, so if you'd rather take face tanking instead, this also generates quite a bit of ultimate charge from the healing. I do quite like the damage that you can get from Ignition Burst. It helps to secure a lot of kills. As for the next item, like I just mentioned, you can take face tanking. I love face tanking personally, as this is a very strong item for when you're building tanky. The more damage that your opponents deal to you, the more you'll heal from it. 30% of any damage that you take instantly comes back to your health bar. This is very strong in big team fights where people might accidentally shoot into the matrix, and you also generate quite a lot of ultimate charge from this healing as well as cash generation. Put it all together and this item is very strong. Then I like to take Express Detonation. Now, if I'm not struggling to stay alive, or I feel like I'm getting my ultimates quickly enough, I will take this round too. However, my main issue with this is that it doesn't offer any additional stats, but what it does do is make your ultimate much more consistent. I do think they could buff this item, not by making it detonate any quicker, that'd be too strong, but maybe give it a secondary effect. Right now, sometimes it can feel like a waste of an item. However, the 15% quicker detonation catches a lot of people off guard, especially with one of the items we'll be talking about later. And last but certainly not least, I take Stat Boost. Since we're going to be using boosters a lot, quite aggressively because of Ignition Burst, Stat Boost works really well by restoring your defense matrix quicker so that you can also get more face tanking value. This item kind of bridges Ignition Burst and face tanking together, and it's a very nice combination. Now you have two items that generate a lot of ultimate charge, one that buffs your ultimate and one that allows you to restore your abilities quicker. I think this is a strong combination. However, there are also some alternatives you can take, those specifically being Ultra Wide Matrix. This will make your matrix bigger and last 25% longer. It won't give as much uptime as Stat Boost does. However, it will allow you to hold it for longer, so it's kind of situational. If your opponents have burst damage, you go for Stat Boost, and if they have consistent damage, you go for Ultra Wide. However, you could certainly swap out Express Detonation or Ignition Burst for this, and have 3 matrix items for extra tankiness. And last but not least, the one I'd probably not take that much is Party Protector. This makes it so that whenever you use your ultimate, you and everyone around you get extra health. This can be really nice. It's basically like a mini Lucio beat drop that lasts a bit longer. However, typically I don't see this get that much value compared to the others. If you did want to turn it into a support ult though, that is up to you. If we are discussing items now, the only item that I'd say you absolutely need is D.va's Detonator. And we were talking about this before when I mentioned Express Detonation works well with a specific item. Now D.va's is a very nice item for your bomb, as it makes the effective range go from 21 meters to 42 meters, basically meaning anyone in line of sight of the bomb will be killed regardless of range. This is insanely powerful. Obviously, it does require the bomb to be airborne. However, when paired with Express Detonation, the explosion will always happen at the peak of the ultimate, meaning that you can maximize the value from this. It's a very strong combination. The stats from D.va's aren't that great. However, for 4K, you should really be picking this up from round 2. The only other main item I deliberately take is Pulse Plating. This makes it so that 10% of the damage you absorb with your defense matrix is generated directly into ultimate charge. When you combine this with face tanking, where you generate ult charge from the healing, you'll also generate an additional 10% from whatever you mitigate. You can generate a very large chunk of your ultimate off of a single defense matrix use, which then makes your other matrix items like stat boost and ultra wide matrix even more valuable. As I mentioned, this build is mainly going to be building into sustain, as you don't need that much AP for this to still one-shot all of the squishy heroes in the game. However, if you do want some more ability damage, maybe for your missiles and ignition burst, I really like to take Lumerico's Fusion Drive, as this is both a survival and healing item all in one, which is very nice. Catalytic Crystal is a no-brainer, as you generate 20% more ultimate charge from ability damage and healing. Just note this does not count for the face tanking healing, only ignition burst damage and missile damage, which is unfortunate, but it would be really overpowered otherwise. As for sustain, if you take Martian Mender, which is dependent on your max health, combine that with the 16 healing per second from Lumerico's, and you have a ton of self-healing even before you account for face tanking, allowing you to stall on point on your own for quite a while. Rüstung von Wilhelm is the best max HP scaler in the game, and Martian Mender is dependent on max HP, so this is a very nice combination. If you're looking for some optional items, especially in the early game, I really like Vesuvius Protocol. This makes it so that whenever you use your ultimate, you lay a huge area of lava on the ground. Even if, for some reason, Express Detonation and Die Huns together don't cause enough disruption, for the next few seconds, the entire point is covered in lava. This lava does around 80 damage per second at its base, making it incredibly hard to push. That, or the 25% booster duration item, which is very nice to make sure you hit as many people as possible with Ignition Burst. And now for some gameplay commentary. Here I do use my ultimate, and it kind of fails, which is quite unfortunate. However, it's fine because this build gets it back really quickly. I engage the soldier and win. Then I charge through the group, try to matrix, but I really did overcommit here. The mace slowed me down a lot, all of the walls went off, and then it was kind of it for me. However, I did manage to get 50% of my ultimate charge back. That's the main downside of this build. It is really easy to overcommit, especially if they have heroes that can punish you by not being able to shoot through the defense matrix on the way back. I'm just looking to get a lot of poke damage in and try to get as much ult charge as possible. Ultimately, I'm going to dive in there and try to stall the point out as much as possible, making sure I fly through as many people as I can so I can get my ultimate online as fast as possible. You'll notice that the lava perk I mentioned before is really going to get a lot of value here because it basically coats their entire point in lava. It makes it impossible for them to move around properly. Now I am kind of solo on that point, which is insane. I didn't realize I was solo during this game. I thought all the other guys were on the point. However, that just goes to show how strong Lumerico's Fusion Drive and Martian Mender are together. And just like that, I'm already almost at another ultimate. It's really easy to see that this build gets loads of ultimate value. Okay, now let's score the build. I'll keep this short so we don't run over. For impact, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. The build is very tanky and hard to kill, and the ultimates do disrupt fights a lot, but Dive Bomb is also quite easy to counter. Outside of that, you're mostly just a tankier version of D.va without much extra damage. For early game, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. This build is very strong in round 1 because of how much damage Ignition Burst adds and how much healing face tanking provides. For scaling, I'd also give this an 8 out of 10. You can build almost entirely into survivability while still getting full value from your ultimate. And finally, fun. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. This build is incredibly fun. It feels like you're juggling multiple minigames, hitting people with boosters, managing your matrix, and then being rewarded with a huge D.va bomb. The only downside is that it struggles against melee and beam comps, which can feel rough. Overall, this build gets a 7.75, which I think is very fair. That's it for today, builders. I hope you enjoyed the guide, and let me know in the comments how this build works for you. Till next time, builders.